Hello, students. Today we're going to talk about period 4 sectionalism. One of the most notable developments in the early 19th century United States was a growing sense of sectionalism. The two sections that began to form was the North and the South for several reasons. The most prominent issue being states' rights regarding slavery. While the U.S. initially held a more abolitionist view, the prominence of Southern King Cotton changed Southern attitudes. In the North, however, and among former slaves, abolitionist sentiments grew in the early 19th century. While some opposed slavery on moral grounds, others opposed slavery to protect white wage labor, and others to keep blacks out of Western territories. Abolitionists. Escaped slave Frederick Douglass, who had taught himself to read and write, started the abolitionist publication The North Star. Nat Turner in 1831 started a failed slave rebellion that, while not successful, raised hostilities and fears in the South due to the sheer violence of the revolt. Richard Allen, a black Methodist, grew tired of church segregation and led a walkout of blacks to start a separate black Methodist church. Lastly, David Walker, a black textile shop owner, would send abolitionist messages in his textile deliveries to the South. Many whites, such as William Lloyd Garrison, also strongly opposed slavery as an immoral, hypocritical practice in the United States. Culture. Culturally, the North and South also began to divide the country. In the South, the rise of King Cotton greatly expanded the agricultural sector and put the wealth and power in the hands of large plantation owners. In the North, however, industry and commerce resulted in a shift towards a market revolution society. Railroads, canals, and new technologies were funded, built, and stretched across the American Northeast. The South, however, lagged far behind technologically as well as industrially as the emphasis became cash crops and slave labor. This quickly resulted in North and South cultural identities and the associated animosities between the two. Missouri Compromise. Slavery became an important issue very early on in the 19th century, particularly after the addition of territory. Being unsettled, these western territories, essentially all land west of the Mississippi River, had to be determined that the slave status of potential new states. So whether this new state was going to be a slave state or not. In 1820, there was a perfect 11-11 split between slave and free states, one that Southerners wanted desperately to maintain, even resulting in fistfights in Congress on more than one occasion. Many Northerners and Westerners, however, wanted slavery to stay limited to either protect the white wage earners who could not compete with free slave labor or simply did not want blacks in the West. Regardless, the two sections successfully compromised in 1820 with the addition of the state of Missouri, known as the Missouri Compromise or the Compromise of 1820. The agreement held that no states other than Missouri, north of the 3630 parallel, could be a slave state. This compromise, however, would only temporarily reduce hostilities as tensions would again explode in 1854 with the addition of Kansas and Nebraska. Immigration. Immigration in the 1820s and through 1840s would rise considerably with the expansion of textile mills and early factories that offered opportunities for employment. Additionally, external factors such as the potato famine in Ireland and the revolutions of 1848 in Germany resulted in many, mostly Catholic immigrants making their way to the less crowded and opportunity-filled U.S. On the Pacific coast, the 1830s to 1860s saw a rapid influx of Chinese immigrants fleeing the bloody Taiping Rebellion and seeking work, constructing railroads, ships, cities, and mining for gold during the California Gold Rush after 1849. While most immigrants had previously been from the Protestant Western and Northern Europe, these new immigrants were either not European at all or were Catholic. As a result, with competition for labor and cultural blending, many Protestant Americans were organized resistance to these new immigrants in the 1850s. Thank you, students, for listening in.